Success transcends cities. As one of the world's most respected business leaders, I know what it takes. Join me now as I sit down with fellow leaders and we share our insights into how you can be successful. My name is Jeffrey Hayzlett, and this is All Business. Hey, in today's environment, the world of investing can seem intimidating and impractical for some. We all know the importance of growing our wealth, but how do we protect it? That's a key question that I want to know. My guest today co-founded an investment platform that can give new possibilities to the average individual and the most seasoned investor alike to create financial freedom. Randy Tate is the co-founder and CEO of iFlip. Randy, welcome to All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett.
Jeff, thanks for having me, man. Super excited to be here.
Well, and I must say right off the bat that I'm also on the board of directors and investors. So I'm a little bit, in favor of having you on the show and talking about this, but only because of what you've done for me and you've done for others. And Randy, my first question is, the economy is challenging right now. What do you think the main takeaway should be for the individual investor right now?
Well, right now, Jeff, we're in a season, if you will, volatility, uncertainty. Turn on the news one day to the next. We don't know what's coming. Companies are struggling. We are in a transition, and we believe that's going to be the season for a while. So one of the things we've been encouraging people to do is, because the environment's changing, because of volatility and uncertainty, it's probably a good time to take a second look at the way you're investing and what the parameters are around your investment strategies. So we're having a lot of conversations with people about this, helping them take a second look at what they're planning for the future.
Well, you mentioned that second look. So when you encourage someone to take a second look at their investment strategy, what are you emphasizing exactly?
Well, let me ask you a question, Jeff. Do you think JP Morgan and BlackRock as institutions are investing the way they're advising their folks to invest? Are they drinking their own Kool-Aid? Are they putting things into a buy and hold for 40 years?
Now, I got to tell you, Randy, I love some of those companies there, and a lot of the guys that run them and the women that run them, both men and women that run them, are good friends of mine. But no, I don't think that they're giving me the same advice they're taking for themselves.
No, they're not, because otherwise they would tell everybody to go buy the S&P 500, leave your money alone, and then they don't make any money. And so that's what we're talking about, a second look. Is the buy and hold strategy that's been the go-to forever, is it still the tried and true method for investing long-term? That's the second look we want people to think about.
All right. So tell me how the company works, because you're a little bit different than, say, algorithms. You're an AI investment company. Tell me how it works and what's different between the two.
Yeah. We treat protection aggressively. For football people, I'll use an analogy. The 86 Bears defense was practically an offense, right? That's the whole idea. And it's extremely important for us to think about it that way. How do we protect ourselves? The reality of it is this, Jeff. Skipping the big drops is far more important than trying to hit the highs. And the buy and hold methodology that's been there forever forces you to absorb both. Anybody listening to this, anybody watching this that has traditional buy and hold investing got their rear ends kicked in 2022. They absolutely did, because that's the methodology. They also got it kicked in 2020 because of Mr. COVID. And so when we really start to dig into it, what do we do differently? We protect. Now, how do we do it is also very different. We are not an algorithm. Although we have algorithms on our platform, we are an AI platform, meaning this: our algorithms are so seasoned now, they're so machine learning, that they change their own rules. They actually change the rules every day, whether they should be buying, holding, or in cash. We also treat cash as a position. We were 80% cash December 28th of 2021. So we skipped the majority of that downturn during 2022. Very different than a traditional investor would behave.
Well, and your results show it. And by the way, when you talk about the Bears, you're supposed to say the Bears. I just want to point that out right off the Right. I mean, you just got to be able to do that. But, when you look at how that you operate, I mean, you've been able to skip those things. I know my own portfolio, and I'll say this, is up into the 20% when everybody else is seeing that on the other side is negative losses. And most of the investment world is focused on performance and what we call, and I think you referred to this before too, beating the market, right? Everybody's about beating the market, staying ahead. I just mentioned that just a second ago. But you have a slightly different perspective. Tell us about your thoughts on protection.
Yeah. Again, it's the continuation of that last statement I made. When you think about beating the market, most talking heads will tell you that you can't beat the market, so you need to get into good funds because the funds are going to protect you from the risk associated with owning the market. What they don't tell you is that the buy and hold mentality itself is the riskiest endeavor, because you're then forced to absorb not just the lows, you get the highs, but you absorb the lows. Skipping those lows, protecting yourself against a 2022, that is the way in which you aggressively protect. And you would then, in turn, don't just beat the market, you abolish it. We were 20% or so ahead of the market itself in 2022. So that's the whole foundation of it. We got to make sure we get that.
So you're trying to change the way people look at their investment, their money. And are you receiving any kind of pushback? And if so, how are you helping them to see investing the way you do?
An education process. When we founded this company in 2016, it was because of the way in which people look at their money. They don't think about it. They give the professional person their money. They let them manage it. And they pray that in 20 or 30 years, they'll have more than they started, which by virtue of the market itself, they will. However, we want people to look at money management as something that with technology, you can really, we say democratize, we overuse that word all over the place, but we've democratized, taxi cabs. Now you just get an app on your phone. We've democratized videos. That's why there's no longer a Blockbuster. This is the next industry that needs to be democratized. People need to look at this and say, hey, this is as simple as an app that I can put on my phone or on my computer that will allow AI to do the heavy lifting and let the mathematics manage it on an equal playing field. Everybody wins when you do it this way because the math is going to tell you the statistical likelihood. And then it takes the emotion out of it and does it for you. Versus buy it, hold it, don't ever look at it. Don't look at it because it can be bad if you look at it, and then we'll see where we're at in 25 years. We want people to look at it. I want you to look at it every day, every week, every month. I know you look at your account. Look at your account. See what it's doing. And then if you want to make a change, push the button, make a change. That's simple.
Now, you have another partner. Tell me about your other big partner in this thing.
Yeah, Kelly Korshak, co-founder. He's the muscle behind the machine, no doubt about it. When I met Kelly back in 2016, and he started telling me about the way institutions invest and the way billionaires invest their money, it was very different than everything I'd ever learned or known about investing. I'm either going to do it myself or I'm going to just give it to a professional advisor. That was my only options. That's not how, like we talked earlier, that's not how the institutions do it. They can, in fact, time the market. Couple of myths that Kelly debunked right away. He said, Randy, number one, people think that diversification in the funds is the way in which you reduce risk. Not true at all. In fact, the more diversified you are, the more like buy and hold of the whole thing you behave, which again takes you right back to the risk. So I'm like, well, how do we avoid that, Kelly? When you put some algorithms on things and you did some statistical mathematics. Now, his background is pretty impressive. I brag about him all the time. If he was on this show right now, he would turn bright red and be mad at me later. He went to Stanford's physics program at the age of 16. He graduated with those degrees, but also degrees in statistics, mathematics, and finance. Went to graduate school at the University of Chicago, came out as a quant, and worked on Wall Street for 30 years, managing money for, guess what? Institutions. When he was at Deutsche Bank, they handed him $6 billion of the bank's private money to manage. You think they give that kind of money to just anybody? They don't. So when we talk about Kelly, he sees the world very differently. He sees it in mathematics, and he understands the markets And what he wanted to build, what he said to me was, let's build a tool that we can empower everyone to invest like the institutions do. And that's what we built.
And by the way, I know Kelly. I think he's one of the nicest gentlemen in the world. Honest, everything about the guy I just love, because he'll tell you straight whether a thing's a great idea or a bad idea, just about on anything, and probably even about sports. I've never talked to him about that, but always about money. And I always watch him take care of people, which is kind of interesting. Now, you talk about taking care of people. What kind of horror stories have you seen with people's money when they come in and their portfolios that they might have, with some of these folks, hundreds of millions of dollars, and some people maybe just tens of thousands of dollars? Do you see some horror stories from time to time?
Yeah, it's interesting, especially this last year, and they're all correlated. People from 30, 40 million on their platforms at big name institutions in traditional buy and hold strategies, right down to your 401ks, right down to the person who is trying to do it themselves. They go set themselves up a little account over at, Betterment or one of the institution places that are less expensive. And they all operate under the same mechanism. It's, back in the 80s, you probably rented a movie at Blockbuster. But you also probably rented a movie at all kinds of other video stores that weren't named Blockbuster. Well, that's like the markets today. That's the institution world today. And so these horror stories, like we know one person we moved, he lost 46%. This is someone with private banking at an institution that had over $10 million. 46% in one calendar year gone. Why? Because they were buying and holding. They didn't bother to try and get out. That same person on our platform would have lost not 46%, they'd have lost 2% in the same thing.
Wow.
That's a whole story.
You hear this thing about you. Let's get back to this buying and holding, because I think this is kind of an interesting thing. Because if I know banks, they're taking their money every day and moving it around, and they even sweep accounts. They'll sweep the accounts at night, invest it overnight into a foreign money market account or some type of money account of some kind. I don't know all the terms. You know those better than I do. But they're always constantly moving and shifting and doing this. They're not holding that stuff. They're not saying, hey, keep it in my savings account and let's hope that we make some money. I mean, they're moving things around every minute of the day, right? Looking at the screen, doing all that stuff. But you do it a little bit differently. You built the programs that not just know those things, but learn those things, right?
Correct. So we don't sweep accounts, but what we do is the money may be in cash, may not be. So in our case, it would be like what you think a savings account would be. But the difference is this. Think of it as a starting block. So you put your money into a smartfolio. It could have anywhere from 2 to 15 different stocks inside of each smartfolio. And maybe half of them are invested. Half of them are in cash. Each of them, though, has its own AI on it. So that AI, every day when the market closes, takes in all the new data. What's the yield curve doing? What are interest rates? What's how much cash is in the, credit card debt? How many people didn't pay their mortgages? All of that data gets pumped into the AI. The AI then takes it, processes it, does its little thing, and then determines again the next day whether you should own that stock or should not own that stock. Either way, when you have that smartfolio, it's acting like its own little mini bank. Every day it's looking at what to buy, not to buy, buy, not buy, buy, not buy. And cash is okay. It's okay to be in cash. People always say this, Jeff. I get this the most. But I've always been told, if I'm going to make money, my money must be invested. The thing we want people to change the way they think is cash is an investment. Because if you were going to put it in Apple, and Apple went down $1 today, and you had 100 shares, guess what? You lost $100. So you lost money. Would you have rather kept that money in cash and then tomorrow buy Apple when it's $1 cheaper? That's the mentality I want people to think of.
So it's kind of like you're watching and you've got my money and you see or learn, or at least the machine does. Let's call it the machine, the Kelly machine that he's built. He sees that it's about to go down. So you pull my money out, and then when it sees it's about to go up again, based on what it's learned, it puts it back in really quick. So in, out, and then, or hold, maybe even hold it for a little bit while they're waiting for that doing. And so if I look at a stock chart, and I look at a year's performance on a stock or 5 years, it's like this, right? Exactly. We're both doing that. So for those that are listening on the podcast, we're going up, it's going down, it's going up, it's going down. And hopefully over a period of time, that trend line is going up from left to right, from the bottom left corner to the top right corner. But this basically, what you're telling me is it eliminates those peaks and valleys and keeps it on that trend line, right?
The idea is to create a smooth left to right, bottom to top line. Smooth it out. Smooth out the ride. Kelly says that all the time. What the AI does is it smooths out the journey. Even if you would have ended up at the same spot in 30 years, who wants to have the palpitations that come with a 30% loss, right?
Yeah.
And if you're doing it right, you're buying at the bottoms, not maybe the very bottom. You might get a little off the bottom, but you're not going to be in the market while it's at the bottom. That's the big differentiator. So it's not doing this, Jeff. It's doing this.
So it's going straight from left to right, bottom left to the top right, instead of going up and down. We're on a podcast for the most part, as well as a TV show. So I want to make sure that everybody can understand exactly what we're drawing on the board. So what's the biggest takeaway that you've learned so far in the model that you're doing?
I'm going to step off of the performance and risk management for 1 second. And the biggest takeaway actually has come in the way we charge people. We don't make a great big deal about it, but we're a SaaS company, simple, transparent fee once a month. That's it. No trade fees, no commission fees. You see lots of this stuff going on, but people don't truly like to buy stuff nowadays. The modern investor, the younger generations, especially as we get into the millennials and the Zs, they don't like to pay for anything if they don't know what they're paying for. And if they don't understand it, they just won't do it. So one big takeaway, big surprise and learning is that transparency in the way you charge is critical. It's even more critical than how much you charge. They'll be happy to pay as long as they know what they're paying for. So that's number one. And my other biggest takeaway is I've been out speaking all over the world, literally, as you know, Jeff, that people truly don't understand how money works. They really don't. They have a general faith that they've just given these people someone their money to manage it and that it's going to go up. That's all they think about. Now, on the bright side, the market goes up 85% of the time. It's that other 15% that causes you massive setbacks. Because they're often, I think 9 times in the last 40 years, we've had 50% corrections. Now, if you're in your 50s or older and you have a 50% correction, you just added 10 years to your work life. And people don't even realize that there's no correlation to how that money works. So those are the 2 biggest takeaways I've got from the rollout as we've really started cooking here.
So we talk about the takeaways. Let me ask you, what's been the biggest surprises for you in this model?
From a surprise standpoint, I'll go both ends of the spectrum. The surprise is how wary and paranoid people are with $10,000 and how loosey-goosey people are with 10 million. It's shocking to me as I have these conversations. I see people throwing millions of dollars around like it's bubblegum money. And I see people holding on to 10 grand like it's the end of the world. And across the whole spectrum. And it is shocking to me just to observe that behavior.
I can tell you, I used to see that when I was the CMO of Kodak. Somebody would come to me and say, well, Jeff, we ran a $17 billion marketing budget, and somebody would come to me and say, well, it's only $2 million. And I was like, dude, what are you talking about? $2 million? Are you kidding me? $2 million is $2 million. Well, that's a lot of money. And, and I would treat 20,000 like it was 2 million. I just added 0, took a 0 away, or a couple zeros in that case. And then say, hey, is it a good decision at 20,000? Well, it's a good decision at $2 million. So That's the way I tend to look at it. Let me ask you, Randy, I go back to your history. You were a marketing executive, one of the key C-suite executives at Infusionsoft, and you led marketing. And now you're a CEO of a fast growing, tech company, SaaS company in the financial markets. What's been the biggest thing for you in terms of making that transition from, just marketing to now, not just marketing, you're the boss of everything?
Yeah, it's been a multiple transition process from a high school teacher, football wrestling coach, to realizing after 9 years, no money there. So I started my own company, and I started my own company from the perspective of there's a problem. And I've learned over all these times that if you can find a problem that a lot of people are having and then attach an easy button to it, you can absolutely have success quickly. So I had that first company for 5 years, sold it to a publicly traded company. Then I started a second company teaching people how to do that. Small business owners, creating education, learning. Basically, Infusionsoft was one of the clients of that company. And then we ended up working for them. And I spent several years there learning the software industry. Yes, sales, marketing, education, training, all that stuff comes along with it. But the biggest surprise that I've learned is that I do have a unique ability to be like, oh, that ain't broke. I'm literally Kelly, my partner, you guys heard me talk about earlier. He gets, every time he starts to explain something to me and he sees me start putting my hands up, he's like, okay, I know, like a third grader. Make it simple, make it simple, make it simple. The biggest thing I've learned, Jeff, and I'll summarize it in this, is if you want to disrupt an industry and truly democratize it, you have to do three things. One, you have to be better than the status quo. You just got to be better. In our case, we beat the market. We're better. You also have to be easier to use. People have to be able to easily consume you. Why do you think Uber took off? Why do you think Netflix took off? Because they were much easier to use. And number three, you got to be less expensive. If I'm less expensive, easier to use, and I outperform the competition and can disrupt an industry. So we started, and what I learned through all these years is that starting with that end in mind is where you get going from. And that's where we started.
Well, fantastic, Randy. Thanks so much for joining us right here in All Business. It's clear that you're flipping the market, and best success to you. I do need to make sure that we give a disclaimer. I am on the board. I am an investor of iFlip, but I think it's a great tool, and what you're doing is just phenomenal. So congratulations on the success, and I'm looking forward to seeing some more, especially at the next board meeting, okay?
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. Well, what a great way to wrap up with Randy. And at the end of every show, I like to talk about what I learned. Now, he had three great points that he says you have to do in order to be a very successful entrepreneur. But the one that I like the most is you got to solve problems. In fact, that's what we do all the time, especially when it comes to marketing, is I like to ask, what problem am I solving? Or what problem are we solving as a company? And if you can get to that, that's how you're going to be real successful. And it also gets you to what you want to do faster than ever before. So concentrate on that. What problem am I solving? What problem are we solving? And you'll be very successful, not only in your job, but with your business too. So that's what I learned right here on All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett. Don't forget to make sure you tell your friends to listen in on our podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, or watch us on C-Suite TV and listen to us on C-Suite Radio.
Welcome to Bestseller TV. I'm Taryn Winterbrill. We're here with Julie Catino. She's the author of Twist, How Fresh Perspectives Build Breakthrough Brands. It's great to have you with us.
So glad to be here, Taryn.
So first off, to what does twist refer? Is it a verb? Is it a noun? Do tell.
It's both, actually.
Okay.
So a twist is a noun, like a plot twist, something new and exciting about your brand and your business. And it's also the verb, to twist things together.
Okay, so to what does it apply?
So it applies to finding a fresh way to talk about your brand, to stand out in the marketplace. And it also applies to the methodology that I've created, where you look at a category for best practices of brands that you love that have nothing to do with your brand, and then you twist those best practices with your business.
Okay, so tell us about the genesis for putting this in writing. What did you find was missing? What was the mistake people were making that you're trying to fix with the book?
Yeah, I think it's so hard these days to stand out in any category. There's so much competition.
Yeah.
In fact, I just got back from teaching a class with Tyra Banks at Stanford at the Graduate School of Business.
Wow.
And Tyra always says that it's better to be different than to be better. And I think that's true. I don't think it's enough anymore for businesses just to be really good at what they do, unfortunately. I think they have to be really good at what they do, and they have to be unique and stand out. So that's why I wrote the book. I really want to help businesses of all sizes learn how to stand out, break through, make the most of the tiny budgets that we have these days.
And Tyra Banks would probably say that that was applicable to her, right?
Yeah.
Because in her time, she was different,
Yeah,
right?
she,
That's
yeah,
what she was
broke
trying
through.
to do.
She had to differentiate herself, and it's also about personal branding as well in the book.
Sure, and I like you discuss in the book sort of the moment that this idea, this twist approach came to be. It involved a mirage on a plane.
Yeah,
Tell us a little bit about it.
This is a true story.
It is, yeah.
So it was in the winter of 2002, and I was a branding consultant. I was traveling a lot, and I was at Newark Airport, having a very ho-hum experience. I really love to visit clients, but I don't really love to travel because I find that the whole process is kind of boring. There isn't a twist.
Yeah.
And in this particular day, I was at Newark Airport, and I looked up, and all of a sudden I saw these McDonald's golden arches on the tail fin of an airplane. And in that moment, I thought to myself, that's an airline that has a twist. That's going to be different. It's going to have a more friendly attitude, maybe a menu of options. McDonald's likes to supersize things, so maybe I could order a regular economy seat, see the plane was really crowded, and then supersize my seat.
Yeah.
So I actually started to get really excited about this airline experience, and then I looked up again, and I realized it was a mirage. It was the reflection of the food court on the airplane window, and there happened to be a jet parked there.
How serendipitous, though.
I know.
I mean, the angles where you were sitting, a lot goes into that timing.
It was crazy, and it was only about 30 seconds, but it was 30 seconds that changed my life.
Right, a light bulb epiphany moment.
Exactly.
So what did you do next? You said to yourself,
Well, I said, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
I was working on some clients, and I went back and I said, I was working with a cosmetics client. I said, well, this is how we're going to innovate for this client. We're going to stop worrying about what all the competition does. It was Avon at the time. I said, we're not going to look at Revlon or L'Oreal or Mary Kay. We're going to look at brands that have great experiences, but in different categories, and take those experiences and twist them back. Okay. And we did that, and we came up with, in a 1-hour brainstorming, tons of new ideas that we had never approached before. And from that moment on, I've been twisting.
Yeah, off to the races, twisting. So can you give us some real life examples, some twist stories, like you mentioned Avon, how, putting this, or execution of the twist, so to speak?
Well, I actually had the great fortune to work for Virgin for many years as the head of brand.
Richard
Branson. And one of the reasons I was so excited when they called me to go work there is that Richard Branson has been twisting for years, right? He started Virgin Atlantic with no experience in the airline business. He was a record company producer.
Right.
So Virgin Atlantic...
I don't know if people realize that. It's the same Virgin.
Yeah, it is the same Virgin. And so Virgin Atlantic is actually a twist between a record company, or a disco, because it was created back then, and an airline. Virgin America, which was one of the brands that I worked on when I was at Virgin, is a twist sort of between an airline and Apple. Right? It's very intuitive. It's got mood lighting. They pay a lot of attention to design.
Right.
So those are just a few examples. If you're in an industry, if you're in the airline industry, stop looking at what all the other airlines are doing, because chances are they're all doing it the same.
Right.
Look at a category for brands that you admire, that inspire you, like Apple or BMW or IKEA, and then twist those experiences.
And it's curious. I mean, it's a unique experience. I can imagine working. I've never worked there, but I can't imagine working for the Virgin Group and Branson. What did you take away from that experience? I mean, what did you learn? Just tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, I mean, so much.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I really learned is Richard has this expression called "screw it, let's do it." And it's
Screw it, let's do it.
Screw it, let's do it.
Okay.
It's actually the title of one of his best-selling books. And it's really about, if you have an idea and you think it's a good idea and you think it's going to solve someone's problem, then just try it. Minimize your risk. Maybe try it in beta, or cover your behind so you don't lose the farm with the idea. But just get out there. Don't overanalyze it. Don't overtest it. And I've really been living that principle. And in fact, I took his motto to heart. So I worked at Virgin for 5 years as the VP of brand in North America, creating lots of businesses. And then I came home one day and I said to my husband, screw it, let's do it. I'm going to start my own business. And he said, well, I don't think that's what that means. They have 2 kids to put through college. And I said, no, that's exactly what it means. I had an idea that there was something missing in the market. I thought there was a lot of branding advice there that was really good, but very much about branding theory. And I wanted it to be branding advice that you could actually use to build your business.
Okay.
So that's why I created Brand Twist.
So tell us a little bit about that execution. If you have a problem with your brand isn't what you want it to be, what do you tell your clients? Give us a little sneak peek into what you'll get in the book.
Yeah. So the first thing people say to me is, well, I have a problem with my marketing. I don't have enough money.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's actually not really your problem, most likely, because even if you had 10 times the budget, you might not have the right brand story. You might not be standing out. So the first thing that I look at is, what is your story? And the most important component of your story is, who do you want your brand to appeal to? Who is your key target audience?
Okay.
And a huge mistake that I see is that a lot of businesses say, we want everybody. We want everybody to use our product or our service. We don't want to offend anybody. So we're for women 25 to 54.
Okay.
And the problem is that's not a target audience. That's like a census box.
Right.
And when you're really talking to women 25 to 54, you're coming out with too broad a message. So you're not going to really connect with anybody. So we spend a lot of time in the beginning of twisting, figuring out, who do you want to twist with? Who is your target? Who's your bullseye target? Who do you really want to help?
Okay. And you talk a little bit about brand blinders.
Yeah.
I'm saying that right? What do you mean by that?
So when a horse is wearing blinders, they can't see anything. I think a lot of executives in the C-suite spend a lot of time thinking about their category, thinking about their competition, and inadvertently they have brand blinders on, which means that they end up doing exactly what everybody else they're competing with does. They're trying to look legitimate, but they don't necessarily have a twist.
Okay.
And a really good acid test of this is, if you're in a certain category, print out your website and the homepage of 4 or 5 of your closest competitors and cross out everybody's name and logo and see, can you tell them apart? And if you can't, that means that everybody's got their brand blinders on.
Interesting.
Because they're using the same imagery, the same language,
right?
Literally sometimes the same stock photography, right? So what I say is, take your brand blinders off, lift your head up, actually go out into the world. We do these things called brand safaris, where we take clients into retail experiences. We go to the Apple Store, we go to Converse and make our own sneakers. We go to a Starbucks and sit for a while and see how people are interacting. And then we take those lessons and twist them with our brands.
So Julie, I love that you're taking your clients into the field, so to speak.
Yeah, we call them brand safaris.
Yes, right, and you have a little bit of a safari.
Yeah, I do.
on your scarf. But I love that, because it's outside the box, and that I feel a lot of consultants, when they're consulting about brands, it's theoretical and look at this example, but really getting in there and getting your hands dirty is a different experience than just theory and analytics.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I'm twisting brand twist almost with Weight Watchers, right? I think that a lot of people know what they should eat and they know what they should do, but I love how Weight Watchers actually gives you tools and accountability, and you get out there and you go to meetings. It's the same thing with brand twist. When we're working with a client or working with a student in our online school, we're not just teaching you what you should know, we're actually helping you do it.
Do it, right, in real life. So just curious, you mentioned this idea of covering up your logo and comparing your websites to others. And when you mentioned Starbucks. What did they do? Are they a good example of twisting? how did they stick out and sort of take the lead and get ahead of the pack?
Yeah, they're a great example of twisting because they're not another coffee shop.
Yeah.
If you read what Howard Schultz has talked about, they're the third place. They were trying to create community. So the whole brand experience, from the moment you walk in and you see the logo with the mermaid, it's not a cup of coffee,
It
it's
is a mermaid, right?
And you see the baristas with their green aprons, and they actually have their own language, and they have the leather chairs, and they have the free Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And a lot of people actually don't know where Starbucks, the name, comes from. Do you know where it comes from?
I don't.
No. It's actually a character in Moby Dick, Captain Starbuck, who was drinking coffee all through the book.
Oh.
So from the very beginning of the Starbucks experience, they knew that they didn't want to be a coffee shop. They wanted to have a twist, which is more like a literary salon or a place to gather.
Right, but they were so sort of ahead of the time, I guess. Up to that point. Who remember? Did we even have coffee? We had Dunkin' Donuts, these kinds of places. I did want to spend a little bit of time, Julie, on your personal brand, right? Because the purple is a planned thing, right?
Yes.
That's part of who you are. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I think it's really important for executives to embody their brand. So my brand is purple. You can see it on my book. It's purple and pink. I only ever dress in purple.
Yeah.
The nails are purple.
True, yeah.
The outfit is purple. But purple for me is two things. It's passion, and I'm really passionate about twisting and helping people with their brands. And it's also a color that symbolizes prosperity. And I really believe that branding is a business exercise. It's not just creative, and twisting is fun and it is creative, but at the end of the day, the title of my book is Twist: Fresh Perspectives for Breakthrough Results. Because I saw at Virgin and other businesses that I've worked with that if you could have a really strong brand twist, you can make your budgets go so much further, you can really stand out, and you can actually charge what you're worth. If you have a strong twist and you have a strong story, then people are going to pay a premium for your product or service.
But you mentioned a good point. What about someone watching who said, I just don't have the money to create a great brand. I don't have the money to execute what you're talking about.
Yeah, when I worked at Virgin, we spent probably 40% less on our marketing budgets than all of our nearest competitors.
No kidding.
But we still had advertising and marketing that really broke through because it had a twist. It was very fresh in terms of the visuals, in terms of the language.
Right.
Richard Branson himself is a great personal brand. Everything that he's doing with the adventures and the kite surfing and the world record, and also personally committed to making the world a better place. That's stuff that he spends time in his own time, but it really supports what the Virgin brand stands for as well.
And what do you say, or how do you combat this idea of C-suite executives who are spending more money on technology or user experience? The brand, they say, the brand will come. It's a byproduct of the other two.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
I get this question from CMOs all the time.
Yeah.
They say, we believe in brand in the marketing department, but how do we get the CEO or the CFO on board?
Right.
And one of the things that I
The
say
CFO is the most,
Right.
They're the ones, right?
Right,
You gotta
exactly.
convince.
So I say, take him or her out to a brand experience. The next time you want to have a meeting, have it in a Starbucks, and while you're sitting in the Starbucks, noticing that it isn't just like all the other coffee shops. And by the way, you're spending probably 5 times more for your double cap, whatever it is.
And people are still doing that. It's
Yeah.
amazing. I thought that would not last, but no, people, it's like inflation. People don't
they're
flinch.
doing it because what they're buying isn't coffee. They're buying that experience.
The experience.
And so have that conversation with your CFO or CEO. And if it's not Starbucks, take them to another brand that you really love, right? Have that conversation there. And then say, what we're experiencing here is brand. And
Right.
that's why we need to pay attention to brand.
Right. Maybe they're not realizing that is the brand.
It is the brand. Your brand and your business are like this.
Right.
You don't spend years or months developing your business and then tack on the brand at the end. What Virgin does really well, and what I help clients do, and what I talk about in the book, is how to build your brand from the very beginning of your business.
Right.
And if you already have a business, how to improve your brand through a stronger twist from moving forward.
Right, but how do you create a stronger twist? What is the process like? Because you want to differentiate, but what if you say, I don't know what that means, right? I mean, what's your advice?
So we talked already about the target. The next
Right.
thing is figuring out what your promise is,
Okay.
and realize that you're not promising what you're selling. right? Starbucks isn't selling coffee. Virgin isn't selling a way to get you from point A to point B. Right. So think about that emotional promise. Netflix, a brand that we were talking about before that we both love, right? They're not selling a way just to download content. They're selling a way to get control of your time, right? To discover new things or just to relax, which we all need right now. Right. So once you figure out what I call it in the book, your top of the pyramid promise is, then you can twist with that and figure out how to express it in all your different touch points.
Right. And you also talk in the book, I mean, like personally, you say to like look into your own personal interests, right? Your own personal hobbies. I like you mentioned one client who is into acrobatics, right? Yeah. And she kind of took that, her love of trapeze, and was it cooking?
Well, no, so it was Hercules.
Hercules, right.
So Liz is a graphic designer.
Okay.
And she had a website, even though she was very talented, her own website, kind of the cobbler's shoes, was not that different. So finally, one day I convinced her to take her own passion for trapeze, which was a hobby, and twist that with her brand. And she rebranded as Big Top Design. Right. I had another client who was a kitchen designer, a professional kitchen designer. On the side, she liked to do ballroom dancing. We twisted those things together. She rebranded as kitchen choreography.
Love it. Right.
So sometimes your personal passions can be things that you could really use to bump up the twist in your professional brand.
Yeah, but I like that because a lot of times people don't merge the two worlds together. They strictly have that professional hat on. But look at, there's so much creativity when you kind of look at the person.
Yeah, and I think you have to do that today. Anybody in the C-suite really has to do that because just, again, being smart, professional, high quality, it's not enough anymore. And life is more fun, actually. Yeah. Business is more fun if you can bring in your personal twist also.
Which I think is so important. And just real quickly, you mentioned Virgin, you mentioned Starbucks. Who else? I mean, Apple, Converse, who else? What other companies have twisted without us even realizing?
Yeah, I love what Blue Apron is doing, for example, right? It's not just a way to get a meal. Right? I had somebody in one of my workshops that said Blue Apron actually saved her marriage. That's what they're promising because once a week.
I say that about TiVo from my parents. When TiVo came out, it saved their marriage because they used to argue so much about what to watch.
So once a week she's cooking with her husband and they have something to talk about. Right. So I think brands that make things easier, that make things more fun, that actually give us less choice in a weird way, are brands that are really winning these days.
Yeah, there's some. I mean, we've barely scratched the surface with what's in the book, which is good, which is why you have to read it. But it's truly unique and inventive, and it's a new perspective on looking at different things to create your own brand and run with it. So congratulations! It's terrific, and we love the purple.
Thank you.
Good to have you with us.
Thanks, sir.
If you'd like more information on the book, just check out our website, csuitebookclub.com, c-suitebookclub.com. I'm Taryn Winterbrill. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time right here on Bestseller TV.
The C-Suite TV Insights, I'm Greg Greenberg. Cannabis, artificial intelligence, the blockchain, perhaps the three most exciting concepts in investing in business today. But how do they all fit together? Here to connect the dots is Brad Moore, CEO of Global Cannabis Applications Corp, or GCAC. Welcome, Brad.
Hi, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you here. And tell me about GCAC. You certainly play in some very hot sectors of the market.
Well, we do, and I think you nailed all of them. We're actually a medical cannabis technology company, and that means that we are focused on providing better outcomes for medical cannabis patients.
Your Afixi platform is billed as the world's first end-to-end medical cannabis data solution. So what exactly does that mean?
Well, no, so that's a great place to start. We actually have on all our solutions a patent pending that came out December 2019. And really what that patent says is that we focus on tracking the growth of the product and the consumption all the way to the consumer and then back to it. We actually call that seed to seed, whereas most people only take it to the retailer.
So before you introduced efficacy, how was cannabis efficacy measured and tracked?
Well, that's the problem, is it wasn't, because cannabis is actually, it's a plant. And even though you can do a clinical study, you can't necessarily guarantee the next time something gets in a consumer's hand, it's going to be the same thing. So when we take a look at all that, what we've done is we've worked with some leading companies like Rutgers and Purity IQ, and that then allows us to focus in, create consistency, and then from consistency, you can measure efficacy. You can't have one or the other, so we're focused on both of those.
Okay, so can you give me an example of how you catalog cannabis all the way through to the consumer?
Yeah, for example, so a blockchain, a good example is the blockchain is just a really great fancy way of storing data, but it's an immutable data storage and it's also public. So every step, for example, if we're working with a medical cannabis, they usually follow a GMP or good manufacturing process. Each one of those steps is cataloged onto the blockchain. Now, once the consumer does it, they download the app, they put their experience, and that's attached to that same information as the GMP. So everything on there in the full life cycle of the product, and why we call it, like I said, once again, seed to seed, not just seed to sale.
All right, and then finally, how big is the market opportunity for GCAC?
Well, it's massive. It's, I think, what you can see with the emerging markets. Let's go back to 2019 when the European Union said we need to take cannabis off Schedule 1, but they said something very significant. Not a lot has changed since then. They said, we need more information. More information comes from more data. More data comes from technology. That's what we provide. We've seen those same opportunities in areas like in Florida and New Jersey, places that want to put regulatory frameworks for medical purposes, because, you know, when we start to get involved with insurance, there needs to be guidelines and frameworks. And in the same thing in Canada, we believe we have a solution that can provide better product to Canadians versus just having to guess and do 20 hours of guessing work on the internet.
All right, well, thanks a lot for coming on and talking about it. And thank you for watching C-Suite TV Insights. I'm Greg Greenberg.